Wolfman. It was so close I could see the wet shine on its teeth. The creature stood taller than any wolf, its shoulders hunched like a man who forgot how to stand straight. Two bright amber eyes burned in the dark, fixed on me through the rain-smeared window. The engine was dead. My hands were numb on the cold steering wheel. I slammed the door with my shoulder, but the car barely moved. The growl came from everywhere and nowhere at once, low and hungry and too deep to be a dog. It circled like a promise. I remember thinking, this is not possible. Then it tilted its head the way a person does when they listen, and I saw the long shadow of a face that was part man and part animal. It had ears like a fox or a wolf, but the shape of its jaw was wrong, more human. Its mouth opened and for a moment I heard no sound at all, only the rain, and then, as if a voice had been pulled from the trees, a sound came that was like a word but not quite language. My name, maybe? Or the small shape of the town's name. Whatever it was, it slithered against my ear and froze me harder than the cold. I hit the horn. It echoed into the woods and then stopped, and so did the creature. The eyes stayed. The world narrowed to that black stare, and everything else, lights, houses, the highway, fell away. I was not thinking straight. I couldn't be. The next moment, the creature moved closer, not on all fours but upright, making heavy steps that crushed the wet leaves. A hand, long fingers tipped with curved nails, brushed the roof of my car. The sound of claws on metal was thin and small and forever. My throat closed. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But my legs did not work. Then, softer than a breath, the thing knocked once on the roof of the car, like someone knocking on a door in the night. It was a polite sound in a place where there should be no politeness. It was close enough for me to see the small lines around its amber eyes, like the eyes of someone ancient. The last thing I remember before something big and impossible happened was that it tilted its head and smiled in a way a person does when they know a secret. Then everything cut to black. I tell you that first because you asked for the moment the title promises, Wolfman, and because memory is a crooked road. After the worst part, my mind kept going back to how it all started, to little things that looked harmless until you pull them together, and they become a map to something terrible. It started with stories, with laughs around warm kitchen tables and late-night calls between friends, with small noises blamed on raccoons. My name is Cole Jennings. I live in a town with one stoplight and a feed store on Route 27. The woods near my house are deep and old. People hunt there in the fall. Kids build forts and tell ghost stories there in the summer. For years, folks in town told tales about a tall shadow that moved where the trees are thickest. At first, it was always some stranger's cousin who saw it. My uncle was coming home from a party and he saw two glowing eyes. Or, my friend woke up to heavy footsteps outside his trailer. People rolled their eyes and told each other not to drive too fast at night. It was small-town talk. It made good coffee shop gossip. Then, over months, the stories grew heavy. A mail carrier refused to deliver on one road after dusk. Farmers found long, deep marks in their apple trees as if something with long fingers had clawed at the bark. A dog trainer swore a dog bolted into the woods and wouldn't come back for 2 days. A boy in high school posted a shaky video online of lights moving in the tree line and voices that sounded like whispering wind. The town police logged calls, too many to dismiss as pranks. People left their porches empty after dark. My neighbor, Mrs. Hale, started keeping her lights on and a shotgun under her bed, though she hadn't fired a shot in 30 years. I didn't believe any of it much until the night my car died. I had worked late at the mill, and was driving home on a rain-slicked backroad I knew like the lines on my hand. It was the kind of road that eats headlights, a narrow ribbon of asphalt and trees that meet overhead. My phone battery was low. I had just passed the rusted old sign that says Creek Fork and thought about pulling over to call someone when the engine shuddered and went quiet. The dash lights dimmed and the radio hissed out like a breath. I pulled over, cursed, tried the key again. Nothing. I popped the hood and saw nothing obvious, no loose wires, just a sudden silence where a machine's voice should be. I walked back to the driver's seat because rain came down quick and hard. I figured a tow truck would come in 30 minutes. I thought of calling my friend Mark, who lived 30 minutes the other side of town, but the phone was dead and I had no spare cash for a tow. I wasn't afraid yet. Fear comes in thin waves. It starts as a small chill you can ignore. I leaned my head back against the seat and watched the trees move in the rain. Somewhere in the dark, something moved. At first I told myself it was a deer or some raccoon, something small crossing the road. Then I heard the heavy steps. They were not the soft padding of a deer. These were the hard, knobby thuds of a weight that did not belong in the forest. It sounded like someone running in boots made of wood. The sound came from the woods and came closer, circling my car as if studying it. I turned on the dome light, and the pale bulb showed nothing but the wet road and the shake of leaves. The light must have shown its eyes too, because when I shone my phone toward the trees I caught that amber flicker for a second, and then it was gone. I remember thinking, that can't be right. I closed my eyes and told myself to breathe. I wasn't alone a minute later. A shape passed the headlight's spill and stopped just beyond the shine. It had the height of a man, but the shoulders were broader, the head set forward like an animal's. The rain blurred its edges. Its eyes caught the light and flashed. I felt the car rock the way boats rock when something bumps the hull. Then the soft knock on the roof. I did not believe in monsters. I believed in jobs and bills and the smell of bread in the morning. But belief is a thin coat when the night scratches at the zipper. I banged on the window with my fists until my knuckles hurt. I tried to start the car again. The radio sputtered and then, for one breath, the engine turned over and died like a belly of stone. The creature pressed its face to the glass, and in that moment I could see not only eyes but the shape of its mouth and the small terrifying suggestion of a human grin. Behind it, where the trees should have been, there was a motion that made my skin crawl, more shadows moving, as if the woods were alive with pairs of eyes. Something barked, but it was not a dog bark. It was a long harmonic sound that lifted and fell like a wind in an old house. Then the creature tapped the glass with one long finger, and it was not a knock anymore but a slow rhythm, 1, 2, 3. Each tap felt like a countdown. I pressed my face to the window and tried to see better. The rain trickled down the glass and warped the reflection, so for a heartbeat I thought I saw my own face behind it, pale and small and helpless. The thing's mouth opened and then, before any sound left, a howl erupted from the trees. Not one howl, but many, layered over each other, coming from deep in the woods and then closer, like a choir answering a leader. The hair on my arms stood up. Then it stepped away and the frame was empty. People argued about it. Was it a prank? A bear? A trick of light? The sheriff took it and said he would look into it. The camera footage went online and strangers wrote their theories in the comments, some kind and some cruel. A woman posted that her great-grandmother had once seen the same face and had called it a protector. Others called it a monster. Months passed. Life kept trying to be ordinary. I worked. I paid bills. I mowed the lawn that summer, though my hands trembled sometimes like someone with a fever. I met a woman named Sarah at the feed store, and we talked about small things, like where to buy the best coffee and whether the new school bus route was safe. For a little while her voice and the sound of her laugh felt like a light in the dark. But whatever the thing was, it was patient. It waits at the edges and it watches people feel safe and then it presses. One evening, as the sun fell and the town settled for the night, I stood at my bathroom sink brushing my teeth and looked up into the mirror. The light was soft. The house smelled like lemon cleaner. I rinsed and blinked, and for the smallest second I saw not only my face but something behind it, a shadow leaning in, skin darker, eyes amber. I turned so fast my breath hitched. The room was empty. The mirror only held my tired face back at me. I laughed then, a short, ragged sound, the kind that is half disbelief and half fear. I brushed my teeth again. I told myself I had been staring at the woods too long. I didn't tell Sarah. I didn't tell Mark. I put the event behind a small, heavy door in my head. That night, as I shut off the light, my phone buzzed. A message from a number that had no name. The text was one short line that I read 3 times and my stomach turned hard. Watch the window. I looked over my shoulder at the dark glass of the bathroom window. The trees stood black and patient outside. My reflection looked back white and small. Then, at the edge of the glass, something shifted, and 2 amber lights blinked once, slowly, and I realized with a cold that made me step back that the eyes were not outside the window at all. They were deeper, beneath the skin that is supposed to be only mine. My heart hit my ribs like a hammer. I fumbled for the lock. My hands were clumsy. I looked at the rearview mirror and saw the shadow fill the glass, the shape of something inhuman standing outside my life. Then everything changed in a breath, a loud crack from the roof, the kind a branch makes, and the car window fogged from a warm breath against the cold. The air smelled like wet leaves and something older. I opened my mouth to scream and the sound caught in my throat as the thing outside whispered, very softly, a name I knew, or thought I knew, and then the world went black. The world went black and I thought I had died. For a long time there was nothing, no feeling, no sound, no rain. Then I woke up on the ground, mouth full of cold mud, and I could hear my own blood like a drum. My head felt like an empty room. My hands were wet and my shirt was torn. The driver's door hung open and the car was where I had left it, but the windshield had a spiderweb of tiny cracks. The horn was still going, one long honk, then silence. The woods were quiet now, as if they'd been holding their breath. A truck came slow down the road. Headlights cut through the trees and my neighbor Mark jumped out like a man who had been waiting to be needed. He said my name until I could answer. He called an ambulance though I didn't feel badly hurt. He said later that I was pale as milk and shaking. In the hospital they checked me for a concussion and for alcohol. I had neither. The doctor asked how I got home, and I told him I walked. I told him the car died and I waited for help. I didn't tell him about the eyes in the rain, about the hand on the roof, about the voice that said a name I could not place. How do you tell a doctor that? How do you tell anyone that the world tilted and something old looked you in the face? Word spread. The police came and took notes, and someone found prints, huge, half-clawed marks in the soft earth near the roadside. They were longer than my hand and had deep grooves, like a grown man's palm with something sharper than fingernails. The sheriff frowned and said, "Animals can leave marks like that." But he did not sound sure. A reporter from the county paper drove out and wrote a small piece. People started talking again at the feed store and at church. Some said I was lucky to be alive. Others shook their heads and whispered about legends. After the hospital, I did what you do when you do not want the dark to swallow you whole. I asked questions. I sat with old men at the diner and listened to their stories. I went through the police files and read about other odd calls, headlights catching eyes on Route 27, a broken gate near Hollow Road, a dog that came back with its fur missing in one patch, a farmer who found his apple trees clawed. There was a map in my head making itself, dots connected by thin lines of fear. One night I drove to the edge of the woods where the creature had stood. The town was sleeping. My headlights cut a white path through the black and the trees leaned over like fingers. I parked and sat there breathing hard, like a boxer before the bell. I had a flashlight and a baseball bat in the trunk. I felt small and foolish, but I needed to see the place again. My hands left prints on the steering wheel and my heartbeat pounded like someone knocking. I walked the path where my car had died. The ground was soft with last week's rain. There were the marks, clear as a signature. The dots were too spread out for a person who had walked upright. The scratches on the trees looked old but not old enough. I knelt and touched one. The bark was torn and the inner wood was bright and raw. My breath came out in a white cloud even though it wasn't cold. I felt watched. The hair on my neck lifted. Then I heard a sound behind me, a long, low note like a horn blown through leaves. I spun. The dark was full of shapes. 2 eyes reflected the beam of my flashlight and looked at me like a child looking at a strange toy. The thing stepped forward slowly. It moved not like a human, not like a deer, but like a tree bending when the wind finds it, slow and certain. Up close I could see the texture of its face, thick hair, but there were parts where the skin showed, dark and thin and human-shaped. Its mouth moved but no sound came. For a moment it watched me, and I watched it, like two animals measuring which of us would break first. I tried to be brave. I raised the flashlight to show it I was not prey. The light hit its eyes and they flared a bright, angry amber. It sniffed. I could hear the wet sound of breath. Then, unbelievably, it knelt. It was taller than anyone I knew, but it folded like a man bending to tie a shoe. Its head came level with mine. Its face was a mix, a man's cheekbones, a wolf's snout, and eyes old as winter. It smelled of earth and old fur. I do not know why, but when it knelt, the urge to speak came strong and sudden. I said the first words that came to my mind. "Why are you here?" My voice was small. The creature cocked its head. I thought it would answer with a growl or a snarl. Instead, it made a sound like a sigh, and then, softer than a curtain in a breeze, it spoke. The voice was not words the way we use them. It was a pattern, a memory, a cold line you feel on your skin. But somehow I understood a single thing: it wanted to be known. After that night, I did not sleep much. I read everything I could about old stories, about shape-changers, about men cursed in the woods, about creatures that walk between the lines of the world. I learned that in some tales a man who is lonely and angry becomes something else, and in others a forest keeps a spirit that borrows flesh. The more I learned, the less simple things seemed. Sometimes the truth of a thing is not one answer but a pile of answers, each with a corner lifted to show more shadow. Neighbors changed. People began to bring their dogs inside before dusk. Farmers put lights on timers and locked gates at night. A group of men met at the VFW hall to talk about setting up watch shifts. I went to a meeting and sat in the back, feeling everyone's eyes on me, and on me only. I wanted to say I had seen it. I wanted to warn them. I wanted to say we should leave the woods alone. Instead, I kept my mouth shut. The meetings did not help. One night, a boy from town disappeared for 12 hours and came back muddy and shaking. He said he had wandered into the woods and someone had led him out. He would not say who. On his arm there was a pale crescent of hairless skin, as if someone had pressed a hand too long. A woman from 2 roads over found deep scratches running across the inside of her barn door, as if something had tried to open it. A dog started howling at midnight and did not stop for an hour. I began to think that maybe the thing was not hunting us. Maybe it was watching us, learning the sounds of our lives. The more we lit our porches and installed cameras, the more it seemed to come closer, as if curious about the noises we made. We put up trail cameras on the edges of the trees. For weeks they showed nothing but the empty night. Then one morning Mark called me with his voice thin like smoke. He said the camera had caught a shape. He sent the footage and we watched, my hands shaking. The video was grainy, the kind of image that looks like a half-remembered dream. There was a tall shadow moving upright through the trees. It paused and tilted its head. For a single frame the camera caught its face in the moonlight, the long muzzle, the beginnings of a grin, and eyes that glowed like coals.